Jaxon stood in the doorway of the Rustwater saloon as if carved from untamed thunder, shoulders broad and scarred by a lifetime of surviving the jungle, eyes burning with a wild clarity that made hardened gunslingers shift in their seats. And while the faint smell of whiskey and gunpowder hung in the air, every man present sensed immediately that the barefoot stranger was not prey but a storm, disguised as a man. Seraphine Wilde studied him with a calculating calm, swirling her drink as she spoke again, telling him that Colt Maddox had left Rustwater with a full posse, mercenaries, deserters and bounty hunters, headed toward the Canyon of Echoes to locate the hidden passageway into the Viridian Keeper's temple. And if Maddox reached that temple first, he would unleash a power capable of enslaving both the West and the jungle. A power the Keepers once sealed away to stop bloodthirsty conquerors. And now Jaxon, fueled by grief and the memory of Ironback's death, refused to let that happen. He accepted Seraphine's offer of guidance, though he understood she was as dangerous as she was skilled. But she alone knew the shortcuts, the ambush points, and the traps Maddox had laid behind him. So together they left Rustwater before dawn, riding across the blistering desert, Jaxon on foot at first, outrunning horses with terrifying speed, then finally accepting a spare stallion after Seraphine laughed and told him, "In the West, even legends need saddles." And for days they journeyed across mesas, cliffs, abandoned mining camps, and ghost towns, where wind moaned through broken windows like lost souls, until they reached the Canyon of Echoes, a twisted maze of stone spires and deadly shadows, where sound could betray your position, and outlaws used the terrain to trap entire armies. And as they entered, Jaxon sensed danger like a jungle beast senses a storm, raising his hand to halt Seraphine moments before a buried dynamite trap triggered, sending rocks crashing down and sealing the canyon entrance behind them, proving Maddox was already close and willing to kill anyone who followed, even his own men. Deeper inside they found signs of violence, broken arrows, bloodstains, and the corpse of a mercenary clawing toward them with one last breath to gasp out that Maddox had found the Keeper's Gate but needed a key, a stone amulet forged from the heart of the jungle, an object Maddox stole from an ancient altar, the same altar where Ironback once protected Jaxon as a child. And hearing this ignited a storm within him, a feral roar echoing through the canyon that made ravens burst from cliffs and made Seraphine whisper, "Now I understand why they fear you." And as they approached the mouth of the jungle ruins, Maddox's men opened fire from the ridges above, bullets raining down like metal hailstones, and Jaxon reacted with inhuman reflexes, shoving Seraphine behind a boulder and sprinting straight up the canyon wall using cracks and ledges as footholds, leaping from rock to rock until he reached the top like a panther in human skin, ambushing the riflemen with brutal precision, breaking barrels, tossing men over edges, crushing rifles, disarming an entire unit with nothing but his bare hands, while Seraphine took down shooters from below with surgical gunplay, spinning and firing with deadly grace. By the time the dust cleared, they had broken Maddox's perimeter and followed his trail through the thickening jungle, Jaxon moving faster and more confidently as the familiar environment surrounded him like old blood, whispering warnings through rustling leaves and distant animal calls. Then suddenly, they found the Valley of the Fallen Guardians, a sacred clearing filled with towering stone statues of former keepers, each one carved in the likeness of ancient warriors, holding spears aimed at the temple entrance. And standing before that entrance were Maddox and a dozen elite gunmen, loading crates of dynamite, preparing to blast their way into the sealed chamber deep underground. Jaxon stepped into the clearing, fury radiating off him like heat from a wildfire, and shouted Maddox's name with such primal force that even the birds fled, causing the outlaw to turn with a smirk that twisted into something uglier when he saw who had survived. "Well, I'll be damned," Maddox sneered, pulling back his coat to reveal the stolen stone amulet pulsing faintly with green light. "The jungle brat followed me home, and he signaled his men to kill. triggering an explosive showdown where bullets screamed through the air. Vines snapped as Jaxon swung from tree to tree, dropping into enemy lines with bone-cracking blows, while Seraphine rolled behind ruins and fired with clever angles, taking out sharpshooters one by one. Jaxon confronted Maddox in front of the temple gate, lightning fast, ripping the amulet from his neck. But Maddox slashed him with a hidden dagger laced with venom from a desert viper, sending poison burning through Jaxon's veins, forcing him to stumble, weakening his muscles as Maddox escaped into the temple's darkness, laughing as he disappeared. Seraphine rushed to Jaxon's side, using her last antidote vial to slow the poison, but told him it wouldn't cure him completely. Only the heart stone within the temple could neutralize the venom and restore his strength, meaning the only path forward was downward into the forgotten labyrinth where ancient guardians, traps, and spirits protected secrets older than civilization itself. So Jaxon, weakened but unbroken, descended into the temple with Seraphine guiding him through crumbling passages and murals showing the rise and fall of the keepers until they reached the chamber of the Heartstone, where Maddox stood atop the central altar, placing the amulet into the stone socket that awakened the entire temple, causing the ground to tremble, vines to move like living serpents, and the Heartstone to rise glowing with emerald fire. Maddox reached for it, but the temple rejected him violently, throwing him across the room with a blast of energy. For only one chosen by the jungle itself could touch the Heartstone, and that chosen one was Jaxon, dragging himself forward with the last of his strength. He placed his hand upon the Heartstone, absorbing its warmth as it flooded his body with power, purging the venom, healing his wounds, and awakening a connection to the jungle deeper than anything he'd ever known, transforming him into a true keeper of the wild frontier. Empowered and reborn, he turned to find Maddox rising again, burnt, bloodied, but driven by greed so fanatical he charged at Jaxon with a scream, firing wildly. But Jaxon moved like the wind between bullets, leapt across the chamber, and delivered a final strike that sent Maddox falling into the abyss below, his scream swallowed by the darkness as the temple sealed shut behind him forever. And when Jaxon and Seraphine emerged back into the jungle sunlight, the animals gathered around him, not as a feral child or outsider, but as their guardian, their warrior, the bridge between two worlds, and Seraphine smiled softly, telling him the West would never be the same now that he existed, and the jungle finally had a protector worthy of the Keeper's legacy. And as Jaxon stood atop a cliff overlooking the vast frontier, wind whipping through his hair, every valley, every canyon, every town, every river felt like a future chapter waiting to be written, a new war waiting to be fought, a new legend waiting to be born. And that is why the story of Jaxon, the wild gunslinger, is only just beginning. And if you want the next saga, the next battle, the next roar of the untamed frontier, make sure you subscribe to Old Whisper Stories now, because greater adventures are coming.